Another week, another update. Am I an indie dev yet? Welcome to Krush Dev Diary. So, what changed this week? Actually, quite a few things, and you might notice some of them, because they are reasonably visual changes. But I'll go through the process and I'll read off my change log. Let's see. First up, the bulldozer now reverses if the car is behind it. Before, it would just stop, and it would kind of grumble and try and rotate to face you, but it was possible to stymie the bulldozer by lurking behind it. I have fixed that. It now backs up on top of you. So that's nice. That's a bit of an anti-cheese method. Next, I fixed timescale versus target magnetism. The magnetized effect of the targets, for instance, repulsive phase and magnetic phase, was not dependent on game speed, which meant that, it's not a huge problem, but I fixed that. It now scales with the speed of the game. So if time slows down, so does the magnetism effect. Minor, but, important. Next up, added phase score bonus. One of the things that came up in playtesting is the temptation to abandon a run if you lost your chain. That's to say, if you lost your chain and you were like 3 minutes deep, there was basically no incentive for you to carry on because you weren't going to be able to score that many points. Now, you get progressively more points as a base with every single phase. So I think it starts off at plus 10 for a base crush. If you make it all the way to phase 20, then you get plus 200 for a base crush. And then chain applies on top of that, and then multiplier applies on top of that as well. So that's a linear ramp on score progression, which should have a knock-on effect that's exponential, which encourages, if you lose your chain, it's not such a big deal anymore. Anyway, what else? Added tile highlight and propagation. Now you see, when there's a new phase, you'll see a white wave of tile highlights go across the screen. That's to indicate that there's a new phase, and it's one of my major visual changes. There you go, there it was. Nothing fancy really, just a white highlight that goes across. I'll probably work on that a little bit today. But I wanted the arena to maybe feel a little bit more alive, because it's been quite static so far. And I still do want to think of ways to make the arena more animated. So anyway, that's one step. Next, calculated score per minute and crushes per minute. These are two new stats which are fairly easy to calculate. I mean, the formula is in the name of them, but you'll see them on the debrief screen. It's a measure of intensity, and the overall KPM and SPM can serve to be a pretty good measure of how good a player is. It seems that around 40 KPM, that's kind of the baseline for a good player. Anything lower than that, and you're a scrub. Next up, a couple of stickers, big ones. There are two. There's one that happens when you stall the car. It's a check engine light. I'm not sure if you'll see it, and the other one you'll definitely see. It's a death sticker. Whenever you die, a skull appears on screen, just to drive home the fact that you dead. So that's another large-scale visual flourish. It's a bold thing. I'm trying to make elements more bold, more strong. That way it has more impact. Right, next up, added sticker shadows. If you look on all of the stickers now, this is a sticker-wide change. They have a drop shadow, which was pretty simple to do, really. It's basically the base black layer, repeated, offset, and slightly translucent. Simples. I added a new stage. I think it comes up later in the gameplay. I'm not sure if you'll see it. It's an icy stage. Basically, it plays with the friction parameters. It drops the friction to a pretty low level, and it also changes the input slightly because with zero friction, you can get quite fast. So I had to tone down the input power slightly. Next up, I added the potential to have a target reset delay. That's to say, now targets reset instantly when you crush them. However, I can reset that delay, possibly for some phase effects. In fact, I could set it to infinite delay, and for a phase I could have 100 targets spawn, but without any respawn. Which, it's an interesting thing. I'm going to experiment with that, see how well it works. But it might be useful anyway. Next up, I adjusted the vignette, made it slightly darker. It was always supposed to be darker than it was earlier. I think I just adjusted it slightly wrong at some point, and it kind of stuck. So I've changed that slightly, so you can see the vignette effect in the corners now. It kind of darkens. Next, added flexible particle scaling. Yes. The particles are like when you smash a target, it breaks into particles. When you crash into the walls, the sparks are particles. All sorts of things like that. What I did, originally, there was only one setting for the particles with regards to size, and that was a shrink Boolean setting. And if activated, it would shrink the particle over time. But I've actually changed that to a scaling factor. So now I can precisely control the rate at which particles shrink, and moreover, I can also make them grow. Now this brings me on to my next point, the expanding hex target smash effects. Whenever you go over a target now, you'll see there's an expanding hexagon that appears. That's actually a particle. It just, instead of shrinking, it grows and rotates, and does the whole do. So that's a new visual effect. And it's large scale. It fills the screen. It's bold. That was kind of my goal, really. I wanted to avoid sort of small scale, finicky stuff, the details, and go for some broader strokes, because the game was missing that. Next up, this is another evolution of the particle system, and you'll see it on the bulldozer and also in the car. It triggers whenever the lights are flickering, so at ignition and when you crash into the walls, you'll see it belch some smoke. There's the smoke effect. It's, the bulldozer sprite isn't finished yet, but the smoke effect itself is actually quite nice, I think. It works. I think there are two sprites. There's a black one and a grey one, and I can adjust the mix. The dozer puts out quite dark smoke, whereas the car puts out lighter grey smoke. And it's all made of hexagons. It's actually hexa smoke, which is quite nice. And it's, it kind of looks all right. It resembles smoke. You'd see it and you'd think, that's smoke. But at the same time, you think, it's made out of hexagons. That's nice. Anyway, so yeah, I added that to but the bulldozer now continually spews smoke, which is kind of what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to be like this malevolent smoke monster. So that's nice. I might have twin exhausts on it. I might have one on either side. So I might have two smoke sources. But that will come whenever I get around to doing the bulldozer again. And the car smoke ignition effects. I quite like those. When you start the car, at the very start of the game, it's nice. Just a little puff of smoke. And if you put like a decent sound effect in tandem with that, like a vroom, that'd be nice, I think. So that's it. That's about it. That's actually quite a lot of stuff. Certainly some big visual changes. You've got the smoke, the hex rings, and then the wave that goes across the arena. It's definitely looking a little bit different to how it did last week. Oh, and one thing as well, the last thing on my list is that the game now fades out at the end. It was a hard transition before, and the debrief screen still needs an in transition, but the game itself now fades out to black, which is quite nice, I think. So that's my changelog. Today I'm not feeling that productive. I think I can get a few things done, but I'm kind of tired from getting the video out yesterday, so I'll have a few hours on this one, I think. There's a couple of things I want to look at. I would like to change the way that colours work on the arena. At the moment, phases are limited to a single colour in the background, but I'd like to be able to have bicolour, tricolour, maybe multicolour phases with different patterns and stuff like that. And gradients. I'd love to be able to have like a gradient between two colours, just to provide a little bit more diversity. Because otherwise, I think it's going to be quite difficult to differentiate the phases on colour alone. So I'm going to work on phase colouring and the arena. So I'm thinking of having a colour for each separate corner, and then that way I can have horizontal, vertical gradients. Or I'll experiment with it anyway, see what looks good. Beyond that, I do need to start thinking about redoing the bulldozer. I might start drawing some stuff for that. Whether or not that makes an appearance next week, I'm not so sure. But yeah, that's kind of something that needs to be done. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next week for another Krush Dev Diary. Until then, farewell.